At night, you are already on your way to bed when a small, quiet intention appears. You will fold the blanket on the couch and switch off the living room light. It feels clean, voluntary, almost satisfying, like closing a tab in your mind. You take a step toward the switch, and then someone says, "Turn off the light." Immediately, your chest tightens. A thin wall seems to rise inside you, not as a thought, but as a sensation. The same action that felt simple now feels assigned. You feel the impulse to resist, to slow down, to do anything except what you were about to do, just to reclaim the steering wheel. Nothing about the room changed. Only the ownership did. In one sentence, a task becomes a threat. This is not stubbornness in the moral sense. It is a reflex that fires when you feel nudged out of the driver's seat of your own choices. Some people can hear a simple reminder and feel their autonomy tighten, even when the request is reasonable. What looks like defiance from the outside can come from very different inner engines, and that difference changes everything. At the core, the human mind does not just want freedom. It wants authorship. It wants to feel, in a quiet and almost sacred way, that I am the one choosing this. When a phrase carries the flavor of control, an order, a push, even a suggestion that lands too hard, the brain can read it as a threat to that authorship. And once that alarm trips, the impulse is not to cooperate, but to restore autonomy. That restoration can look like procrastination, like suddenly losing motivation, like doing the opposite, or like going emotionally numb and stalling. What matters is that it happens fast, often before you can weigh benefits and costs. It is a psychological flinch, a protective move that guards identity as much as it guards freedom. That is why two people can hear the same sentence and react in completely different ways. The outside behavior might match, but the inner reason can be worlds apart. For the freedom fighter, autonomy is oxygen. They do not simply prefer choice, they need it to feel alive. The moment someone tells them what to do, even gently, it can register as an attempt to grab the wheel. So they push back, not because the task is wrong, but because being commanded feels like being reduced. You can see it in small moments. They are already thinking about going to bed early. Then a partner says, "Go to sleep early tonight," and suddenly they feel an urge to stay up, scrolling, wandering, proving to themselves that no one gets to decide their night. Sometimes they still do the responsible thing, but they do it with a clenched jaw, as if paying a tax. The cost is real. To defend their freedom, they can sabotage their own best interests, just to say, "I'm the captain." The counter-dependent can look fiercely independent, but the engine is different. Somewhere earlier in life, dependence came with danger. Maybe it meant disappointment, humiliation, or a loss of control. So, they learned a scarred belief. Relying on others is unsafe. When someone gives them instructions, their nervous system does not hear help. It hears judgment. It hears, "You cannot handle this," or "I'm above you." That is why a simple directive can feel like disrespect. Their response is to build a fortress. They would rather do everything themselves than risk needing anyone. In relationships, this can show up as a sudden emotional shutdown or a quiet decision to separate and handle it alone. In teams, it looks like withdrawing and taking ownership of tasks in isolation. The tragedy is that the fortress keeps them safe, but it can also keep them exhausted, guarded, and lonely. The logic seeker does not revolt against authority itself. They revolt against authority without competence. What they need is not permission, but coherence. If you ask them to do something, they want the why, the criteria, the trade-offs, the evidence that this is the right move. When a command arrives with no reasoning, it can feel like being dragged into someone else's fog, where mistakes are likely and accountability is unfair. In workplaces, they are the ones who ask, "What problem are we solving? How will we measure success? What happens if this fails?" To a hierarchy-focused manager, that can look like pushback or insubordination, but internally, it is a protective instinct. They are trying to keep standards intact, to make sure effort goes somewhere meaningful, to ensure the work is worth doing and done correctly. The downside is friction. In environments that reward obedience over clarity, their insistence on logic can be misread as stubbornness. The demand avoider is different because the trigger is not control or logic, but the very shape of a demand. Any "you must," even when it comes from their own mind, can set off real anxiety, a fight or flight surge that makes the body feel cornered. This is why a to-do list can become a trap. They can write down things they genuinely enjoy, reading, practicing music, even calling a friend, and once it becomes an item, it starts to feel like an obligation. Then the system freezes. From the outside, it looks like procrastination. On the inside, it is pressure in the chest, a tense stomach, a mind that cannot find the first step. Many learn to trick their brain to move. They soften the language, create micro-choices, tell themselves it is only a 2-minute experiment, or turn it into play. This is a description of a pattern, not a diagnosis, but it explains why willpower alone often fails here. Most people are not just one type. You might be a freedom fighter with family, a logic seeker at work, and a demand avoider when you are already stressed. The key is noticing what your resistance is protecting. Is it protecting your sense of control, your fear of relying on others, your need for a clear reason, or your nervous system's need to feel safe? Once you can name the engine, you can stop fighting yourself blindly. You can adjust how you speak to yourself and how you ask things of the people you love without pressing the hidden trigger. What all command-resistant people share is the hunger to feel like the author of their own life. Resistance can be a guardian, protecting dignity, safety, and identity. But it can also become a gatekeeper that blocks the very outcomes you say you want. So here is the question worth sitting with. When you push back, are you defending freedom in a meaningful way, or are you accidentally refusing your own future? And once you see this pattern clearly, you can start understanding not only yourself, but also a partner, a coworker, or a child who seems to fight every request.